And next up, it's lithium explorer Bradda Head Lithium. And usually, Bradda Head are exploring for lithium in the United States as hard rock, clays and brines, 3 different types of lithium deposit. The company remains well funded with a strong cash balance of 5.4 million as at 31st of March 2023 and has an extensive drill program planned to start shortly at its San Domingo Pegmatite district in Arizona that the board believes will generate material catalysts for the company. The company is listed in Canada, London and the US and has a current market cap of £15 million. Here to explain the strategy in detail is CEO Charlie FitzRoy.
Yes, sorry. Great. Thanks for the intro, Donald. Great to be here.
Good to see you. Would you like to take us through your presentation, Charlie?
Yes, we'll do. Well, it's great to be here and, as you said, speaking to new investors and also existing shareholders. Bradda Head, as you said, is a UK, it's a US and a Canadian listed explorer developer with projects in Arizona and Nevada. There's some forward-looking statements here I just want to bring everyone's attention to. The company owns all its assets outright, 100%. So we've got our brine projects up in Nevada, and we also have our clay projects down in Arizona and pegmatite projects in Arizona too. Right now, the company is very much focused on its clay project Basin and its pegmatite district, San Domingo. This is where really the company sees the most growth and potential for shareholders over the next 6 to 12 months. We have brine projects up in Nevada, which are currently, we are on hold with those currently just while we conserve our cash and focus really on our clay and on our pegmatite projects. And I'll go through a bit more later. So the company is phenomenally well located within the US. We are near infrastructure, we're near existing mines. Both the projects, San Domingo and Basin, are located roughly 7 miles off the highway. We've got 100% renewable energy nearby. Everything is there to really develop these projects for the long term and build sustainable, low carbon footprint projects in the US. And as I said before, both Basin and San Domingo are either adjacent to existing mines like Basin. We've got Freeport's Baghdad copper mine, which is just east of our Basin project. We've been there for 100 years, still operating. And then we have San Domingo, we have 6 or 7 or 8 historic lithium projects on the San Domingo license area. So both areas, not greenfield sites. And then from an ESG perspective, we're very much engaging with the local communities, stakeholders and tribes in the area to make sure we're building relationships for the long term. And again, Bradda Head has that split geological risk between clays, pegmatites and brines. So we have a better risk profile compared to a lot of lithium guys out there. Shareholders, we've got a very supportive shareholder base. Our board of management, skin in the game, own about 20% of the company. And then we have some very strong shareholders alongside of that. Zenith Minerals founded the assets back with Jim Mellon, Anthony Bailey and Jason McDonald back in 2016. And then we have LRC, Lithium Royalty Corporation, who own a royalty on our Basin project and Wikiup project. Their subsidiaries, Zenith Minerals, who are associated with Waratah Capital, and Lithium Equities own about 12%. And then we have Nigel Ray at 5.2%. And then below that, we've got 3% holders. So very strong supportive shareholding base there. So these are some of the characters involved with the project. You'll see there the chairman's Ian Stalker. Ian's very well known in the mining industry, and he spent 30 years himself in Africa, built 12 mines, very experienced. I'm a geologist. After studying geology at uni, I spent 5 years in the army before working in equity research, asset management, M&A, all in the mining space, and also corporate development at a large Chinese miner before I joined Bradda Head. Jim Mellon's our largest shareholder. You see him on the board too. And then Joe Wilkins is our COO based out in Arizona, who's Arizona born and bred and phenomenal asset for the team driving the projects out there. And then we have a very strong technical and advisory board. We've got Yatendra Sharma and Don Haynes, who advise on our lithium side of things. They've both been in the lithium industry for 20, 30, 40 years between them. And then we've got ESG, Adam Hawkins, who's our ESG professional. So a really strong team, understand how to grow small companies and return value to shareholders. So this is the projects we're really focusing on, our Basin project and our San Domingo Pegmatite district. Both are not far from Phoenix. San Domingo is about up road from Phoenix, and then Basin's another 45 minutes up the road from that. And we operate out of a small town called Wickenburg, where we can keep our team lean and just operate both projects out of one location. You'll see on the side there, we have a very low discovery cost. It means it costs us $11 to go in the ground to prove up a ton of lithium carbonate equivalent resources at our basin project. And right now, we're actually drilling at our basin project. We put out a news release out this morning saying we're going to have significant resource expansion later this year. And I'll run through that a bit later when we get to the basin page. So very exciting times for the company. From a sort of lithium macro overview, we've had two lithium waves. And this year, we've seen a massive drop in the lithium price, and it has now recovered. And it seems to have stabilized around $40,000 a ton in China. So we're seeing that new stabilization price much higher than previous prices. And there will be a third lithium wave, and it's just picking that right moment. Bradda Head right now is at a very attractive share price, very good price entry for anyone coming into the stock. So please look at that. Bradda Head obviously we are developing projects in the US for the US market. And that enables us to be able to reduce our carbon footprint compared to lithium coming in from abroad. Most lithium is mined in South America or Australia and then sent on to China to be processed and then sent on to the US. So we are going to bypass all of that route by developing these projects in the US for the US market, and we'll understand the energy mix going into it so we can reduce the carbon footprint content even further. And this will become much more important in years to come when we will likely see a carbon content premium for low carbon content lithium carbonate. And that's really what Bradda Head is pushing towards. So that is the rundown of the rough overview of the company, lithium market, and now we're going into the projects. This is really where we have such excitement for the year ahead. This is firstly up is our San Domingo Pegmatite district. This is our 23 square kilometer district in Arizona with old historic lithium mines on it. And that really governed where we drilled on our first drill program, which we finished earlier this year. And we'll soon to start a second drill program this quarter, which will build upon what we've learned from that first drill program and all the work we've done since then. We've got 23 square kilometers, and we're seeing a 9-kilometer strike for our lithium mineralization, which is very exciting. You'll see on the bottom side of the screen there, our best intercept from that first drill program, which is 32 meters, 1.6% Li2O. Why is that important? Well, it's shallow. It's just top 25 meters of the surface, so easy to get to. From a comparison of assets around the world, a good resource grade is between 1 to 1.4%. And for example, lots of the mines in Australia where the majority as well as pegmatites are, their cutoff grade is 0.5%. So that grade profile is very good. And it's very exciting for this first drill program. In that first drill program, we did 7,000 meters and we hit mineralization in about 60% of those holes. That's a phenomenal first result. And to take it into context, that first drill program is only covering about 1% of our 23 square kilometers. So really, really good first program, and we built upon that since then. So we did lots of follow-up work. We did soil geochemistry, which you'll see on the screen now, which enabled us to look at lithium, cesium, rubidium ratios. We use those ratios because lithium is very mobile at surface, while cesium, rubidium present in pegmatites are not. And that enables us to highlight hotspots. So after that, we got on the ground and looked on the ground for spodumene. And the black spots you'll see are areas there where we found spodumene which weren't previously. This map actually has got many more. We're going to update very shortly. So this is showing a 9-kilometer strike of spodumene, which is obviously what we're focusing on this project. And it shows we're the perfect distance from the host granite, which means we've got a very sweet spot of spodumene-bearing pegmatites along a 9-kilometer trend, which is a huge distance. The first drill program enabled us to identify areas for a follow-up and also exciting areas for where we can find potentially for resource delineation, because the goal of this next program is to delineate a resource. That's what we're really going for. You'll see on the left-hand side of the screen was phase 1 up in the north of our claims, and then phase 2 on the right-hand side in the south of our claims. You also see there at the bottom left of the screen, let me just get the pen ready. You'll see our North Morning Star project down there. Those holes are in green because we've got drill data for those holes, but we haven't done that data. That was from the 40s and 50s where the projects were mined for spodumene. We don't have the assays for that, but we know there's exciting amounts of spodumene bearing pegmatite. So that is obviously a high priority target for our next program. As you can see, the identified trend from our previous phase 2 program. So this is our Morning Star prospect. You'll see on the map there, it's got spodumene bearing pegmatites open at depth. You'll see it open at depth here. And this is an area just in the southwest of our claims, and then we go up to the far northeast where we have that really intersection. So we can see the whole claim block has got mineralization in it, and we're looking forward to getting drilling here because once we start drilling here, we will hit spodumene bearing pegmatites, and we know the grade profile is good because we've done channel sampling at the surface here. We've also consulted our geophysical data we did back in 21 and our structural mapping which we did recently, and we believe there are pegmatites at subsurface here, so we could have a larger strike than we think, and that's why this next program is vital for us because it's going to really, we are pushing towards resource delineation. That's the goal here. You'll see on this map here our priority targets. All the yellow areas are where we've identified areas of priority targets through either the geophysics, structural mapping, and also the soil sampling. And the red areas you'll notice are where we've drilled previously. So this next program is going to be much more extensive, and we know a lot more about the area now. So this is really where we see a lot of value for the company, because pegmatite mining is lower capital cost, easier to get in production. Everything about it is easier compared to brines or clay, which are slightly more complicated, especially from a processing side of things. So this is really where we see the most value for the company. And we'll be starting drilling there very shortly in our second program in the space of 12 months. So after that, we move on to our clays. So we have our WikiUp project, which is just here on the map. And then we have our basin project just here. And our basin project is where we put out a news release this morning showing our next 5 assays, which is going to lead us to a significant resource expansion in this half of the year. And we are now working with SRK to get that next mineral resource estimate proven up. As you can see on the map here, this will be our 4th mineral resource since 2018, and also the 3rd one since early 2022. So we've been very busy at Basin. This program now is focused on the Basin East extension area you'll see here, and also into Basin North. Previous drilling was only focused on Basin East. So you'll see this outline here, this resource. So this new area covered will be 4% of our claim block of the Basin project. Sorry, not 4%, sorry. 4 square kilometers of the Basin project with a 17 square kilometer project in total. So we expect a significant resource expansion. And the reason why we're so excited from the announcement this morning is because if you look at the cross-section below and also the map above, where we drilled previously at Basin East, which is largely the area here, all our upper clay unit, which is our higher grade unit, is about 34 meters on average. And now we're seeing that more than double across the creek. So all the area at Basin East extension, we're seeing double the thickness of the upper clay unit, which is very exciting for us for resource expansion, also the grade profile increasing. So we're looking forward to getting this resource out. And most importantly, I suppose, is we have a royalty in place for LRC for our clay projects. And once we increase our resources to 1 million tons, we get another $2.5 million coming in. And that's very important, especially in the markets right now. It's tough to raise funds. So this really helps us and extends our runway of cash, which is very vital for us as a company. So very exciting times ahead at San Domingo. We're starting our second program very shortly. And Basin, we are coming towards the end of this program here, where we'll see significant resource expansion later in the year. And I want to talk about our brines as well, because whilst we're not doing any work on our brines this year, they are very prospective. We are trying to in discussions with various groups about JV potential there to really get the value out of the brines without us putting too much cash into them. So these are 2 projects up in Nevada where we've identified the presence of brine-bearing reservoirs, and also our Wilson project on the left here, potentially a clay one. You'll see this magnetotelluric scan here. You've got a clay profile, and below we have a brine, and then at Eureka, we have a brine potential there. So both of these projects, we've identified lithium at surface, and we are in the process, as I said, discussing potential for JV options of these 2 projects to develop them, whilst we focus on our near-term projects where we see most value for shareholders, which is our San Domingo Pegmatite district and our Basin project. So as you see here, we are in the process of drilling at Basin. We've got a resource estimate out in end of Q3, early Q4 time. And then San Domingo drilling is about to kick off, and the main goal of that is to delineate a resource. And at the same time, we are permitting for our plan of operations, our Basin West and West extension, which is just west of Basin East extension, for a drill program early next year. So a lot going on at all these projects. Exciting times ahead for us as a company. So in summary, we obviously have, as I said, very strong ESG potentials too. Our ESG team are very much focused on helping us engage with our local stakeholders and tribes in the area. We have a community website which enables us to talk to our stakeholders and give them give us feedback on how we're doing. So we're very focused on the long-term relationship here. So in short summary, US-based lithium explorer developer, funded for our 23 programs, new resource on the way for our clay projects, San Domingo Pegmatite district drilling about to kick off, very experienced management, supportive shareholders, ESG focus, a lot of news flow on the way, and we're in the most phenomenal place in the US, top 2 states in the US for mining. So there you go. Any questions?
Fantastic update, Charlie, and very concise. You get today's gold star.
Well, thank you.
Very good. Let's talk the RNS. You put an RNS out this morning. Let's just quickly run through that to make sure that everyone's up to speed with it.
Yes. So the RNS this morning was a really positive RNS for us. The market has responded very well, which is great to hear because right now RNSs get mixed reviews. And so what we this morning we put out there is the next set of assay results. And what we're showing is that we've now drilled around the exterior of our Basin East extension claim block, which is just next to Basin East and next to Basin West and North. And it's showing that we have clay throughout that area. So we've got mineralized clay and we've got the complete sequence. We have the upper clay unit and the lower clay unit. And that's important because the upper clay unit is much higher grade and it's double the size of Basin East extension. So this is, sorry, Basin East. So this is going to lead us to a larger resource expansion this year. And as I said, we are targeting that 1 million ton expansion to get the royalty payment. So really, really positive results for us today. And now with SRK, we are pushing ahead to get that resource done as soon as we can.
And you basically add the resource from East and the resource from West, and that all counts towards the royalty.
Yeah, any resource at the clays counts towards royalty because at our Basin project, we've got 17 square kilometers. At our WikiUp project, about 29 square kilometers. And our Basin project, we've got an exploration target by SRK of between 1 and 6 million tons of LC, so lithium carbonate equivalent. So we've got a huge potential there. It is potentially a project builder a company builder in itself, Basin. And this end of this next program, we would have drilled on about 4 square kilometers of it, which we're really going to see some significant resource expansion.
Okay, and let's take an overview of the entire business. You've got 3 prospective lithium targets in Arizona and Nevada. You've told us already that Nevada is brine and you're not going to do that this year, yes?
Correct.
So what are your targets? What are your priorities in 2023 and beyond? What's the strategy?
Well, for us, the key thing is getting a significant resource in place at Basin, which means we can start our PEA. And once we get a PEA in place, a technical study, means we can then apply for funding from the US government. And that is really what we're focusing on because we want to make sure we are limiting dilution for shareholders. And that is a good way of getting us funding going forward. And then San Domingo, again, we're about to kick off drilling there. It's our second drill program in the space of 12 months. And we are focused on delineating a resource there so we can move towards technical study again to enable us to get funding for the US government. Because whilst the clay project, we are very excited about, and we're going to get some significant resource growth this year. The pegmatite project will be easier for us to get into production, lower capital cost for a plant. We'll be producing a concentrate, so a 6% spodumene concentrate, and we'll be selling on to a end producer. Like, for example, Tesla have just set up a spodumene conversion, they're building a spodumene conversion facility in Texas. So that would be an ideal place for us to sell our concentrate to, or over to Piedmont's facility in Carolina. So a lot of places in the US are now setting up these facilities, and that's really why we're excited about San Domingo because we are in the right place for these markets, and we're well located in the US, in the southwest US, where there is a huge amount of battery factories popping up. LG Chem have just announced last year they're putting up a $5.5 billion battery facility, as Tesla are doing in Texas. Tesla already have it in Nevada. There's a lot of going on in the southwest of the US and especially in northern Mexico as well. So we're so well located for all those markets.
So San Domingo is hard rock drilling, it's pegmatite. Why does San Domingo excite you so much?
Well, pegmatite mining has been very proven during the times of lithium price rises to be able to, the miners can really scale up and turn on the taps. It is a straightforward mining process. It is not a chemistry set. Some brine projects can be delayed, like we've seen Lake Resources recently had a 6-year delay because of its DLE process. With pegmatite mining, it's very well understood. There's no complex chemistry to it, and it's very straightforward. So if we can delineate a sizable resource there, we will have a massive growth in value for us as a company. We've got a huge area, 23 square kilometers, and it's been mined for spodumene already back in the 40s and 50s. So we have spodumene there. We are now just drilling. We've got 1,500 pegmatites at surface, for example. We did a mapping program of SRK, got so many outcrops, and now we're just trying to understand the structure. And that's really what the second program is going towards. We've understood much more from the first program. We've done soil geochemistry, geophysics, structural mapping. And this next program is much more targeted. The first program was focused around old mine workings to understand, to try and really get some good interceptions. And we got some. And now we know a lot more, and we are really excited about getting going for this next program because if you look at valuations of lithium companies, you've got pegmatite miners up here, and then you've got clays and brines lower down. So that's why I really got so excited about the pegmatites.
Okay, you're going to push on with the pegmatites. Is permitting going to be a slow process, do you think? Or is it possible that a mine supplying strategically important lithium might be fast-tracked for the US market?
In the last 12 months, we have seen a definitely a softening in permitting. We've got a very good relationship with our permitting officials in Arizona. We've done everything in the right way, and we actually are seen as a gold standard company in the state from how we permit. So we managed to get our permits on time, and that's obviously in the US. That is one of your main hurdles is permitting. So we've got good relationships, we've got a good team in place, and also most importantly, we very much have set up our relationship in the local area with our local communities and tribes and stakeholders. So they are very supportive of us too, because we are trying to be good stewards of the ground out there. So permitting, whilst it can take long in the US, we've got a very good relationship. So we perceive it to be only a matter of time.
Okay, my last question for you. What do you think the news flow is going to look like over the next 6 months? If investors are looking to invest in the stock, it's always good to have it's good solid news flow. So I suppose that's a double question really. What's the news flow going to be like? And what's your investment summary? What would your investment case be if people want to invest in you anew, or if you want to renew people's watch list interest, all those good things?
Well, we've got a lot of news flow coming from our basin project, where we're going to have our last set of assays come through. And then that will all push into the resource expansion. Right now, we've got SRK working on that. And that resource expansion, we are pushing as soon as we can get it. It's going to be towards the end of this quarter, maybe early Q4, but hopefully we'll get it sooner than that, because that really triggers that next royalty payment. And that's what this next resource expansion is all about. And then alongside of that, with Basin, we'll be having the announcement we get the plan of operations permitted at Basin West and West Extension, and that will lead into drilling next year, which will lead into much more significant resource expansion target. So there's a lot going on at Basin from a resource expansion point of view. And once we get significant resource, we can kick off our PEA, because that will really lead to a much bigger NPV on any technical study if we get a sizable resource before we start that PEA. And that's what the technical study will mean for us alongside of the funding. So that's Basin. And then San Domingo, again, we'll be kicking off drilling this quarter and getting results out to the market. We've got priority targets, which we are going to focus on. And the key aim of that is resource delineation. So we'll be having announcements throughout this program, updating the market on what we're doing, how our drilling's going. And the key thing is to push towards a resource in that point. But that's really the focus for us right now as a company, is conserving our cash, focusing on Basin and San Domingo to make sure we focus on the assets which have potential for most returns for shareholders.
Okay, that's very clear, Charlie. I'm going to do a bad thing to you now. A whole rush of questions have just come through. The electronic system being what it is, I've now got a backlog of 4 different questions for you. Are you happy to take those?
Yep.
Yeah, good man. Okay, Josh Cole asks, he says, Morningstar seems very promising. How many meters do you plan to put into that pegmatite alone?
Well, the program is going to be success driven, but Morningstar, as Josh rightly points out, is a high priority target because we have historical drilling there and we know we're going to hit spodumene. So we are roughly guiding the program, a third up in the north, a third in the center, and a third in the Morningstar area. That's really roughly how we'll go. So that's all I can say right now, but it might be more, might be less, depends what we find, but we're pretty excited about that area. And we see that as a real high priority target for resource potential.
Okay, Elijah John, great name. Okay, you get today's Best Name award, Elijah. Are you looking into DFC funding, says Elijah?
We are looking at all US funding options, but for us as a company, we can't get funding from the US government until we get technical studies in place, and that's really the focus for us, and that's the key thing for us as a company. But we are trying to. There is potential for us to get funding on some of the options with the clay route, because some of the clay processing technology can be seen as novel. So we can get funding potentially from other sources like Department of Defense before technical studies, but that still can't kick off till next year because they've had all their funding allocations for this year. But we are very much, I was in Washington in January this year, myself and the CEO, we did a tour of all the policymakers in Washington to chat to them on the ground. So we've got a very good relationship and links with these guys out there, and that is something which we are focused on as soon as we get these technical studies sorted.
Technical studies. What do you mean by technical studies? And likewise, if you could, it's a new world that you can go to the government and say, I'm drilling for lithium. Can you give me money? So perhaps if you could explain that a little bit more for our investors.
Got it. So with mining projects, we need technical studies, and technical studies advance in confidence and knowledge and certainty towards a final technical study. So we'll be doing an early stage technical study called a pre-economic assessment, which will be the first stage of programs, either like a scoping study, you'd call it. And this will be just an initial study put in place to show that actually this project has legs and economics. And then you move on to a feasibility study or a definitive, and then there's definitive feasibility study, or how some people call it, a bankable feasibility study, which enables you to get debt and equity for going to project financing. And that's really what we need to do, because the US government has a lot of people, a lot of projects, a lot of lithium guys trying to get funding, and they need to have a filter. So they said, fine, we only look at projects with a technical study for funding options, which makes sense. I understand that, because there's a lot of companies out there, and not all mining projects go the full distance. So that's how they are filtering who's viable for a funding opportunity or not. The US government's got 369 billion put aside for this via the Inflation Reduction Act. So we're very excited to get going on that once we get our first technical study in place.
And Elijah, I think this flows very naturally on. When do you realistically see a PFS to be completed for your project? So, how long will it take you to get to preliminary feasibility study stage? A year or two?
Well, yeah, for the basin, that's the basin. Obviously, whilst we see San Domingo as the most exciting prospect, the clays is quite refreshing because it's a sedimentary deposit. We can have drill spacing much wider. We can predict where it's going to be, so it's much easier for us to form up a large resource. The key thing with that basin project is just the processing work, which we are doing in the background, because clay has a slightly everyone's trying to work on the processing side of things, and we'll do a PEA, kick it off towards the end of the year. That would take 6 months to do, and then we'd feed information from that, do further drilling, and a PFS we could do the following year. So it's quite a short-term distance for PFS, but it depends really on how things develop with the project. But we see potential for large resource expansion with the pegmatites. We need that first resource in place before we can start a PEA. But again, with the pegmatites, it's a much more understood route to end production, so things can move much more quickly.
Charlie, that's us for tonight. I think you've been absolutely fantastic. We've learned so much about your project, and you've been a fantastic exponent of it. Thank you.